friends, welcome back to Death Before Decaf. My name is Emily, and if you're new here, we talk about productivity, we talk about lifestyle and navigating a lot of things, academia, job, whatever, with flair and style and grace and fun. And today I wanted to talk about a topic that's a little bit heavier but no less important, and that's been weighing on my mind a lot in this beginning of the year. And that is how to handle judgment and those sort of ever-present questions that come when you are an atypical student, a graduate student, or just someone who doesn't work a standard one job 9 to 5. So maybe you are a humanities student, maybe you work for a nonprofit, or you're an artist, or you don't fit into the very rigid sort of constraints of what is seen as a productive profession in a capitalist system. You've probably felt the weight of other people's expectations on you, and let's be real, expected paths are rarely a part of our lives, but we sometimes feel like they are the status quo and that they are what we should all strive for or be in. But that's not necessarily always the case, but that's especially true if you're someone who doesn't fit, for example, the typical student mold. You're a grad student, you're in the humanities, so on and so forth. But what's the typical grad student anyway, right? It doesn't really exist, but someone who fits the prescribed version of, diligence, knows all the right jargon, is perfectly at ease in the ivory tower, has a clear-cut direction towards a so-called productive career, but that is obviously a myth for the most part. I think that sometimes we forget that everyone in grad school or everyone heading towards a career, or even people that are in their career deep in and loving it, we're all just really making it up as we go, aren't we? And that's something that we tend to forget, but it's all very abstract and it can feel like heavy judgment, but at the end of the day, everyone is going at it their own way, and everyone's questioning themselves, and no one is perfectly happy in a little box that they followed with no mistakes. So I think that's a great starting point to remember as we dig into this conversation further. Now, it's really good to remind ourselves that there's no such thing as a typical path, and that everyone is making it along as they go and faking it till they're making it, but that will never stop really the questions, the ones like, when are you finishing, or are you planning on doing something practical with that, or what are you even gonna do with that, or is that your career, or do you make enough money, or all of these questions that can sometimes weigh on a person as they navigate their situation. So if you find yourself in that position often, if you just don't feel like you fit the conventional script, those questions can sometimes feel like an interrogation, and they can sometimes sting also, especially when they might come from people who don't understand the nuance of pursuing something unconventional in a field that might be perceived as theoretical or impractical or unproductive. Being a sort of atypical professional or atypical student really does not mean that you're less capable or less dedicated. It just means that you've taken a different route. Maybe you have a non-traditional background, maybe you're balancing work, family, school, personal challenges while pursuing a degree or doing whatever it is you're working in. Maybe you didn't follow the straight path from, high school, undergraduate, graduate studies, but all of these experiences always bring something to the table. And the problem is that there's this constant pressure to justify your choices and to explain why the path that you chose is valid, but honestly, you don't owe anyone an explanation. As long as, your bills are paid, you're not depending on anyone, it doesn't really matter, especially not when the judgment comes from someone who doesn't see the value in what you're doing as a reflex and intrinsically, or someone who doesn't understand the demands of humanities or arts or nonprofits or freelancing or entrepreneurship or anything considered atypical. For me, for example, as a master's student in history, I get those questions all of the time. People often assume that a humanities degree is just reading books and writing papers, and yes, that's a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but there's some heavy critical thinking, dissecting cultural histories, analyzing systems of power, questioning things around you. It's about using your voice to make sense of the world, and it's something that we need in our society, and often we don't realize the need for things like historians until there are none of us anymore, which is a sort of scary path that academia is taking. But I truly believe that someone needs to make sense of history so that we can make sense of the present and then make sense of the future as well. So what you are doing, and I'm talking to myself too here, has real world value, even if it's not immediately obvious to everyone. Now let's talk about how to handle those questions. And the judgment that comes with being an atypical professional. First things first, don't take it personally. It's easier said than done, I'm aware of that, but those questions usually stem from simply ignorance, not malice. But when someone asks something like, when are you finishing? Or what's your plan after this? Or what are you gonna do with that degree or that project you're working on? They're not actually questioning your worth or your capabilities. What they're doing is that they are projecting their own anxieties about their life and their idea of success onto you. They are worried about how they fit in the system, and you don't need to carry that burden. So here's my strategy for dealing with those questions and those possible judgments. Take a deep breath and keep your answers simple. Usually they don't even really know. They're just waiting for you to say something that will validate their anxieties. So you don't owe anyone a detailed roadmap of your academic life or of your projects, of your work as an artist or any of that. A polite but firm response like, I'm taking my time to make sure I get it right, or I'm focusing on research right now, is more than enough. And if you are feeling particularly bold, you can always give a little lesson on the meaning of the humanities or the meaning of your work in the arts, or whatever it may be. I'm not, but if you're feeling like it, I would encourage you to do so and engage in those conversations, because you might help someone see the validity and the value of these atypical paths. The most important thing to remember is that your journey is your own and it belongs to you. And people who ask those questions or make those judgments don't get to decide what success looks like to you. That belongs to you. If your path isn't linear, you're just forging a new way of doing things, and that is a strength and that is a beautiful thing. The world of academia and the world of academia in and of itself, but the world in general, if you live in a Western country under a capitalist system, is full of rigid norms and rigid expectations, and it's easy to feel out of place when you don't follow the prescribed steps. But think about this. The greatest thinkers, the greatest scholars were atypical in their time and place as well. They questioned norms, they took their time, and they created their own path. So do not be afraid to do the same. So next time someone questions your choices, your path, or your progress, remember that you don't need to justify your existence. You're doing just fine. You are already a valuable part of the conversation, and if they don't get it, well, let them not get it. Move on. Focus on you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope this very short video helped remind you that your path is just as valid as anyone else's. If you have enjoyed this little chat, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, leave me a comment telling me in which atypical field you are and how you deal with judgment and questions, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.